Hey, welcome back to our leadership studio here. And today we're interviewing a very unique leader in Houston, one of the leaders in the fight against human trafficking in Houston and across the state of Texas. We have Maria Trujillo with us, and she is the executive director of Houston Rescue and Restore. Welcome to our little discussion on leadership, Maria.
Thank you.
Let's start. I know we want to talk a lot about trafficking, but let's start with leadership.
Sure.
And if we were writing the Maria Trujillo book on leadership, we had a couple of chapters. What sort of key points do you like to make in terms of your leadership style, Maria?
I think the number one thing that is important in leadership is you have to be really passionate about your work. And you can't be fake about that passion. If you're going to be a really strong leader, that passion has to really go through and through you. And that really allows you to be very charismatic about the issue and really help you bring people to the issue. So that passion just has to be true and it has to run through every ounce of you. So if you're going to be a leader, especially in the nonprofit sector, that is really vitally important. And then I think the other big thing is that you have to be honest about your work and very transparent. If you're going to get people to follow you on this path and want you to be a part of the work that you're doing, you have to be honest and transparent about who you are, what you're doing, and how you're going to do that. Especially, as a nonprofit leader, you're asking people to give their hard-earned money to you to this issue that you feel you can make a difference in. And so being honest and transparent is really, really important. And then I think the last thing is about communication and having really strong, open communication, not only with partners, but with your staff, and just establishing that open communication. It kind of goes hand in hand with the honesty and transparency, but having that good communication amongst all the different constituencies that you work with.
Do you think because you're working in the area of trafficking that idea around passion is even stronger? I mean, because it seems to me, when I'm talking about trafficking, there's a lot of passion in the audience. People really get excited, if you will, about this subject. So do you think that maybe for you it brings it out a little bit more?
Maybe so. I just think if you're going to go into the nonprofit sector at all and you're going to try to take a leadership role, you have to care about what you're doing, because you're not going to be making the big money in the nonprofit sector. So you do have, so you're getting your rewards from the work and being just a true believer of why you're there and the importance of doing the work. And trafficking does really bring a lot of people to the table who have such a heart for the issue. And so that may be a reason why it brings it out even more, or why it's maybe even more important to truly be passionate, and people will see if you're not, because they are passionate about it too.
It's interesting, the whole issue of trafficking has sort of become visible very quickly, right? I would say in Houston, it's certainly been in the last 7 years or so that it's become visible. And for many people, they're just hearing about it last year or this year. I was on the founding board of Houston Rescue and Restore. Talk a little bit about that growth of the organization, because it started quite small, just an idea, but has now is now quite dominant in what it's doing. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's a really interesting organization, which I think also started out of a passion, right? It was a volunteer coalition, a group of passionate citizens who saw that this was an issue that needed more light, that people needed to know more about this issue. And that's where it got started, was passionate people coming together and coming up with this idea that we need more awareness on human trafficking. And then that passion grew into becoming a 501c3 in 2007. And then then you start getting funding and other people around. So then you could start establishing a staff. I was the first paid executive director of the organization in 2008. And we've been able to really grow and build the infrastructure that a nonprofit needs to then be able to deliver our message more effectively. And now I think we're one of, a very well-known organization on the issue of human trafficking. And that has really grown in bringing really quality people to the organization who are passionate about the issue and who exude that passion when they're talking about and educating the community.
How many staff do you have right now?
I now have 5 full-time staff, and we have lots of interns.
How many volunteers do you have about?
We have probably over 300 volunteers in our roster. We're really It's been really great to be able to establish a robust volunteer program and provide a place where people can really plug into the issue, because that's what people want. They get really interested in the topic and they want to know how they can contribute. And that's something that we really try to focus on, is how community members can be part of the solution to end slavery in our country.
And board members, how many board members do you have right now?
We have 11 board members right now. As you know, it was a very small board at the very beginning.
Yeah, I think we're 5 of us or something.
And now we have 11. We'll probably have a 12th one coming on really soon. So yeah, a very excited and dynamic board, and that's been really great too. And so I've seen the changes in the board and changes in the staff over the last 5 years.
Obviously, there are lots of struggles whenever you're growing an organization, especially in the nonprofit world where you sort of struggle for funding sometimes. Talk about your leadership challenges as Houston Rescue and Restore has grown into what it is today.
I think the biggest challenge coming in was that it was just this idea, and it didn't have a lot of foundation. Didn't have a lot of literally didn't have a lot of walls. And you had to build that infrastructure so you could be more effective and successful. So that was the biggest challenge. I mean, when I came in, we literally were in a closet basically on a Wells Fargo building, which was great, free, space.
It was a free closet.
It was a free closet, but it was still a closet. Now I have a $1 space, which is a huge improvement. You never know what $1 can do for you. But it has walls, and we have doors, and then also allowed me the opportunity to and become a professional organization. When you're just an idea, also bringing that professionalism to what you're talking about, because people aren't going to take you seriously if you don't present yourself in a professional way. So that was another challenge, like making a very professional website and professional brochures and information, and just kind of building that brand of the organization. I think the name has constantly been a challenge for the organization. I inherited a name that doesn't quite describe what we do. We still get calls about people wanting us to rescue their animals. So that has also been a challenge. But I think in getting our brand out there, we have more name recognition, and therefore a stronger recognition of what the organization really is about.
If you had to change the name today, do you know what you would change it to?
We're actually in the process of changing it right now, so I'm going to just let that surprise come out.
So it's going to be a little surprise.
Yeah, later on.
Okay, very good. Talk to me a little bit about putting together your staff. When you look for people, how does your leadership style sort of have an impact on how you hire, and what do you look for when you hire people?
Well, one of the big things that I actually went through a leadership course at the United Way, and talking about the best way to build teams, and kind of looking at Myers-Briggs type stuff, but they have this color system of red, yellow, green, and blue, and that different leaders have different dominant colors, if you will. And that was actually really helpful for me to learn about. There's the red, really dynamic, get things done kind of leader. There's the blue, data-driven leaders that need, a lot of the data and need to think about things first. And then there's the green, very compassionate, feeling people who need to you want to make sure that everyone has buy-in and is in part of the process. And then there's the yellow people who are all about ideas and generating ideas. And the best kind of what I got out of that is that the best kind of team is a mixture of all of those things. And I'm more of the red-blue kind of person. And so when I look at hiring, I actually look for people who are not exactly like me, because I need those pieces in the puzzle to make a dynamic team. I need the people who have the ideas and are out there just throwing ideas out there. I need the green people who are the caring, nurturing people who are going to nurture everyone and bring everyone together and provide that kind of environment. But I also need other people who are data-driven. And
so are you actively looking, when you're hiring, you're trying to make sure that you have sort of that balance on your staff?
Yeah, I am. I really am thoughtful about that in my hiring practice. And it also depends on the role that they're taking for the position. So, depending on which role I'm trying to fill, I'm going to be looking for those different kinds of things. But overall, I want a team that has all those different pieces.
I want to talk about sort of your rise and your career path, and then I want to talk a little bit about trafficking. You're not from Houston, right?
I am not. I am a native of Denver, Colorado, the Mile High City. Born and raised in Denver, and
where'd you go to your undergrad? Did you do your undergraduate work?
My undergraduate degree at Claremont McKenna College, which is a tiny little school just east of LA. And then
It's a great school, though.
It's
highly regarded school.
Highly respected school.
Yeah.
A tiny school. And then I got my graduate degree from American University from Washington, D.C. So I've kind of hit both coasts. And it was I met the founder of Houston Rescue and Restore through a connection that I had in D.C., working as a volunteer on the anti-trafficking movement in D.C., and that's actually what brought me to Houston. And
is that really where you got started in terms of working in the anti-trafficking movement, was in D.C. during graduate school?
Actually, no. What's really interesting is that when I was in high school in Denver, our senior year, we're on this World Affairs Challenge, and you get this question once a year, and you're supposed to put an entire project on this question. And the question was about slavery and the use of multinational corporations, use of slave labor in developing countries. And I never really thought about it or knew about it, but it was kind of talking about international business and like the cost of, this global market that we were creating back then. And that's where I got my first introduction to the issue of human trafficking. And it was one of those things that just kind of planted its seed.
Sure.
And I pursued a degree in international affairs, both my undergraduate and graduate degree. And then it wasn't until I traveled all over and came back to DC that I got involved in kind of a grassroots movement around human trafficking.
And when you were traveling all over, was trafficking always something that you were thinking about, that you were seeing a little bit about, and maybe exploring a little bit?
A little bit. It's definitely something. I spent a year living in Japan and traveled all over East and Southeast Asia, and you can't ignore trafficking. It's very pervasive and in your face.
Once you know about it, right?
Yeah, and the seed was planted many, many years ago. And so once it's just so obvious, or even in Japan, there's a vibrant sex industry. And it's just very, very obvious. And so when I came back from living there, I knew that I wanted to volunteer in some capacity around trafficking. And I wanted to give back to my community in some way. And so it just, it was a perfect marriage and a perfect opportunity to kind of join this grassroots movement in DC.
Yeah. When people talk about trafficking in America, usually the first time people hear about this, they think, well, this must be an international problem. Talk a little bit about that as a myth, and then talk about what trafficking really is in the United States.
Sure.
Because there is a mix of the international, but it's not all international.
Absolutely, and I mean that's a myth or it was started because that's also how the federal government saw the issue of trafficking back in the late 90s, and that's how they really viewed and drafted the Trafficking Victims Protection Act, was around this idea that we have individuals from international destinations coming to the United States forced into these trafficking situations, and that does and still exists.
Right.
Absolutely. However, what we've seen over the years is that it's not just an international issue. It's not an issue of immigration or migration to the United States. It is that, but it is also an issue of people born in the United States who are also victims of trafficking. So it's really an issue of exploitation and exploiting anyone's vulnerability, whatever that might be. It might be because you are not from the United States and you don't know the language and you don't know the laws. That might be your vulnerability. Or it might be that your vulnerability is low self-esteem.
Yeah.
You've been bullied in school. You don't feel you belong. You're an outcast. You come from a low economic area. It could be a number of things, and it could just be a sense of wanting to belong.
Mm-hmm. You and I have spoken at churches together. It's oftentimes we're sort of grouped together to talk about trafficking. But when you're talking to someone who just who's in your office and really wants to learn about trafficking, what sort of examples do you give of trafficking in Houston?
Well, there's a variety of trafficking situations in Houston. We see, I always make sure to let people know that there's labor trafficking and sex trafficking that takes place in Houston. Houston has a very
people
diverse,
often forget about the labor part, but it's sort of real.
It is. It's actually very prevalent. One big example about labor trafficking that's very prevalent in the Houston area is domestic servitude. We've had many cases of domestic workers being forced against their will to be maids and nannies in multi-million-dollar homes, and it's one of those interesting forms of trafficking that I don't see. It's not because of the money that people are making, but it's more about the power and control over another human being, which I just find really just raw and horrible. We also have a, unfortunately, vibrant sex industry that really breeds a lot of sex trafficking that takes place of young boys, young girls, adults of all ages, and we see it in both international victims as well as U.S. citizens, and so that's a huge example of trafficking. We've also are seeing traveling sales crews and young kids being exploited and being part of these, selling magazines door to door and things like that, and so we're seeing a rise in that, so I think that's always a good example too.
It's amazing. And when people talk about the sex industry in Houston and its impact on trafficking, especially among domestic girls, how does that manifest itself?
Well, because you have a vibrant sex industry, that means that you have a vibrant demand for commercial sex. And, in order to keep costs low, the easiest way to do that is to recruit young girls and or boys into the sex industry and fill that demand. And also, I'm wondering, and I don't know if the demand is going younger or not, but we're definitely seeing more of that. And, sex sells.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Talk to me about the impact of your organization, Houston Rescue and Restore, in fighting and growing awareness around trafficking here in Houston.
Yeah, when I first got here 5 years ago, I would definitely agree with you that very few people knew about the issue. I kind of have the cocktail reception kind of test, the litmus test, if you will. When you go to a cocktail reception and someone say, "Oh, what do you do?" And I say, "I work on the issue of human trafficking." 5 years ago, most people were like, "Really? That's a problem? What do you mean you're working on human trafficking? Is that something that, from people overseas, you work overseas or something like that?" And that was kind of the response I got from the vast majority of people at the cocktail party. Now, it's a very different story. I would say many, many more people are like, "Oh, human trafficking, yeah, I saw a story about that on the news," or, "Oh, isn't the mayor doing something?" or, "I saw a billboard," or, whatnot. And I do really feel that a lot of that awareness raising is a result of the work of Houston Rescue and Restore. That's really what we focused on. We really found that niche of really narrowing on and focusing on raising awareness and educating the community and frontline professionals. And I'm seeing the success of that.
And when you think about what has to happen in the future and how you guys as an organization can grow and impact the fight against trafficking, what do you see?
There's two big areas that we're looking to grow in. One, we've already started baby steps in that. We really see that prevention work is really important on human trafficking. It's great to work on the tail end of that in terms of rescuing victims, and that is important, but you need to also look upstream and see why people are falling in the river in the first place. What kind of prevention strategies can we put into place to try to prevent young girls falling victim to trafficking? And so that's an area that we're really focusing on. So we have a girls prevention program that we've established. It's been around for 2 years now, and we're getting in there. And we also think talking to young men too, and talking about the glorification of pimp culture, and can we create a generation that no longer demands the commercial sex industry? And I think that's some very important prevention work as well. The other area that we're looking into is doing more research on the issue of human trafficking, or working with others and other academics. There's still a lack of solid evidence-based research on the issue of human trafficking that helps us understand more of the root causes. What is the real prevalence? What are those numbers? So then we could actually have stronger evidence, so we could then have better solutions.
Yeah, very good. There are a lot of people who want to start their own nonprofits, right? We hear this all the time. "Oh, I want to start my own nonprofit." There are people who are taking this class who want to start their own nonprofits. When you think about the struggles, the mistakes, the things that you did to grow Houston Rescue and Restore, and if you're giving advice to someone who comes up and says, "I want to start my own nonprofit," what are some of the mistakes or some of the challenges that you had, Maria?
Well, first I think I would say don't start a nonprofit.
Right.
There's about 18,000 nonprofits in the Houston area. I think there could be definitely ideas for nonprofits that aren't out there yet.
Yeah.
I think one of the big things, I guess going with that, is finding out what's out there in the marketplace. Who can be your partners? If you're going to be successful in doing nonprofit work, you have to have partners. You have to work with other community members. And more often than not, you don't have this super original idea. There's probably other people that could work with you. And also untraditional partners. in the anti-trafficking movement, homeless shelters are a good partner. Domestic violence organizations, think outside the box. So I think that's a huge thing, in creating those trusting relationships and knowing that. I think the other big thing that creates failure in nonprofits is not having a diversified funding stream. Being too dependent on one sole source of funding will kill a nonprofit very quickly, because once that funding stream is gone, then all your funding for your programs are gone. So that's one of the things that I've really tried to work hard, and I'm still always working on, is diversifying those funding streams. And every single program should have multiple funding streams, because if one goes, you could at least still continue your programming. So that's, I think, really, really important.
Talk about that diversity of funding. How do you guys raise your money right now?
Well, we have government funding from the federal government. We also have state funding, and then we have local foundations that we also apply to for funding. But then also really, it's about getting people involved and really passionate about the issue. So you want to have individual donors, you want to have that private donor base of individual donors, corporations, and people like that. So trying to do all of those things. And you could do that through fundraising events, you could write grants, or you could just sell products. You could do all those things, and I actually recommend doing all of them.
Trying to do as much as you can. I'm trying a lot of different things. One of the tweeted questions, Malta Alvarenga, who always does great questions, she asked about your annual Big Dipper Dash race, and what are some of the changes that have improved the results over time?
Yeah, so that race has really transformed over the time. We are at our third different location this year, which we're hoping this will be our home for a good while.
So where are you going to be this year?
So this past year, we moved our location to the Heights area, running along the bayou, the White Oak Bayou towards downtown and then back again. We really love that location. It's really centrally located. We started having our first race was on the seawall in Galveston.
Oh yeah,
with like 100 people.
I remember that. Yeah.
In the rain, it was like really crazy. So
good idea, but
it was good. It was good. It was a good idea, but it was too far, and so it's absolutely changed since then. And we've really spent a lot of time developing partners. For the last 3 years, we have a great partner with California Pizza Kitchen as a food sponsor. We made a great partnership with St. Arnold's this year, and also Torchy's Tacos. So trying to expand and have really
cool places too.
Yeah, really cool hip places that people want to be able to have their food, and all of that's part of the registration fee is all this free food. And we had a band last year. We didn't do that this year, but maybe we'll bring out the band. One of the big things is we want it to be a fun, exciting event that people want to come to every year. And we also had an after party this year at a local bar just in the area, so that was really fun at Lucky's.
And how much are you making by doing this? Because I think that's, sometimes people think, well, this must make millions of dollars.
It doesn't. It's a lot of work. We're still only making about $5,000 each year, and so we're still trying to grow. Races are hard. I think that's the other big thing. Doing big events like that costs a lot of money.
They do.
And you have to have a good amount of critical mass to be able to make it really worthwhile. We're still growing that race, and we're hoping that we can more than double that next year. We're not at the Hawk level yet. Their run is really super successful, but they've been doing it for 20 years. We're only in 2014 will be our 5th year.
And special events are sort of investment, right? The idea is that when they're successful, you have a lot of unrestricted money, a lot of money that you could really be innovative with, but you have to get there. You have to raise the money. You have to do the things that people want to spend their money on.
Yeah, you need to make an event that it's something that people mark their calendars on, that they know, and we're starting to get there. Like, people now know the first Saturday of September is our 5K. It's a Big Dipper Dash. It's also different. We do it at night. Most runs happen really early in the morning.
That's why it's called the Big Dipper Dash.
Yeah, because we could see the North Star. The North Star is helped people out on the Underground Railroad find freedom to the north, and so that's why we call it the Big Dipper Dash.
You have a whole story.
We have a whole story on it. It's a great story, actually. So we're getting there. It's also brand recognition and people thinking it being a novel idea. So it's getting there. I think it has a lot of room to grow, and we're excited to continue it.
Well, another great question that came was Richard had a question. Beyond helping victims, how can we fight the root causes of human trafficking? This is Richard Kendall.
That is a really, really great question. And when it comes to human trafficking, because there's so many different ways people are exploited, root causes are poverty, hunger, bullying, self-esteem. So there is a huge number of root causes, all of them of which are really, really important to work on. So those are kind of the things about thinking about non-traditional partners. Thinking about hunger, like maybe we should work with hunger organizations and how can we really stamp hunger as a way to bring it into human trafficking.
I often think it's about poverty and parenting. I mean, if we can solve poverty and parenting, we could solve a lot of.
We really could. We really could. The other thing that we talk about is, about our own consumerism as part of human trafficking. Some of the reason why we have this huge global slave trade is because our own consumerism and really looking at the mirror at ourselves and how we can make a contribution to being more socially conscious consumers and demanding that the products that are made in our marketplace are made without slave labor. And so that's another huge root cause that I think also will go towards the poverty issue and things like that. If people are being paid fairly for their work, they're going to invest in education, they're going to invest in clinics, they're going to invest in their community, and they're going to be more vibrant communities that are no longer vulnerable to slavery.
The other part of consumerism is also the internet has made it easy for people to buy young girls, young boys. So it's, in a sense, the whole demand for trafficking victims has increased as well in terms of consumerism.
Absolutely, on both sides. I mean, the internet has made it really easy for people to play out their sexual fantasies and in real life. And before it wasn't that way. It made it really, really easy. And so, again, I think it's also talking about parenting, having those honest conversations with your children about self-esteem. We shouldn't have shows that say pimp my ride, pimp my crib. Right. We really should be owning the word pimp for what it really means. It's a slave driver, it's a slave owner. We shouldn't be selling products that are super sexy to kids that are 7. Those are the kinds of things that we need to have those honest conversations about. We don't have to be Puritans, but we also shouldn't be so overly sexualized as well.
Let me ask you sort of a delicate question. You've mentioned slavery a couple of times. There's been a little bit of a discussion, right? Especially in the African American community, that slavery is something different than what trafficking is. Is that something that the trafficking movement has had to sort of address in some way? Because you still hear that every once in a while.
And it's interesting. And there's actually organizations in the anti-trafficking movement who say they're working against human trafficking and slavery, and they have the and, which I always find really interesting. I guess in my definition, human trafficking is modern day slavery.
Right.
And that's, I guess, the way I address it is that it's a modern day form of slavery. And to make the distinction, it is not the slavery of old that was very targeted to a very specific race and enslaving an entire race. I call modern day slavery an equal opportunity slavery. It's not targeted to one specific race, but really targeting anyone who has a vulnerability that can be exploited.
Yeah. It's an interesting topic that's come up a couple of times and I thought worth addressing. Jennifer Tomasic had a question around your biggest accomplishment as a leader. I mean, if you had to list your biggest accomplishment, Maria, do you have one as a leader?
I got invited to the White House. That's
Very
pretty
good. And you went.
And I went. I think that was an accomplishment in terms of how much the organization has grown under my leadership, and therefore a recognition on a national stage that they asked me as a representative of Houston Rescue and Restore to meet at the White House on a stakeholder meeting with other national leaders on the issue of human trafficking. That was a truly huge honor, and just shows that the work that we're doing is not just getting attention here in Houston, but that it's getting attention worldwide, or at least nationally.
Denise Small has a question. As a leader, Maria, how do you deal with staff members who have burnout after seeing such terrible acts of abuse? Does that even happen? I mean, is that something that you see?
One of the things that is, I think, helpful for us in the way that we work on the issue of human trafficking is that we don't have direct, immediate contact or regular contact with victims of human trafficking. So none of my staff are hearing those stories of directly from victims about their situation, so that secondary trauma isn't as evident within our organization. However, that doesn't diminish the fact that every day we're talking about this really horrible issue, and we do have these secondhand stories that we're receiving about human trafficking that are really, really horrible. So that is really important. One of the things that I try to do is just, make sure people take care of themselves, that they're taking breaks, that we have staff outings that are just fun, that we take a day where we go to the zoo, we, go to a food truck, eat, really great food, and just have fun as a staff.
Yeah.
And that's a good way to just kind of get away from that.
It's interesting, the idea of having fun, having a sense of humor, the camaraderie of a staff really can overcome a lot of, people ask me the same thing, all this bad data, all the stuff that you're seeing that are happening to children, but it's all about that teamwork and all about the staff being together on stuff.
Absolutely, and just establishing a strong, open communication and strong team. And I think having those fun times is a key to making that happen. Like sometimes we'll go see a movie together, or go to a happy hour, or just do things that are out of the office, getting people out from behind their desk, behind all this sadness, and do something fun, which is really important.
Samantha Coates wants to know about your international experience. Did that help develop you as a leader, and has it helped you within your organization?
Oh, absolutely. Living overseas is such an important experience. I lived in France for 6 months. I lived in Israel for 3 months, and then spent a year living in Japan. And that really teaches you flexibility beyond anything that would ever teach you about flexibility. And that is really important as a leader. You have to be able to roll with the punches and not take things so personally, and also makes you understand and recognize that people are coming from their own cultural perspective. Even in the United States, everyone has their own cultural perspective, and you have to respect that and honor that. And you may not agree with it, but you have to honor that and know that from their standpoint, that's how they're seeing things. And knowing that as a leader is really helpful to kind of take a step back. You're like, okay, we're not communicating, so let's maybe try to figure out how I can better communicate. But I think the flexibility is the huge one.
Yeah.
And just being able to roll with the punches and being like, all right, that didn't work, let's try something else.
And I think it represents intellectual curiosity too. I mean, that's sort of a big part of it. When you see international experience on someone's resume, does it make you want to interview them a little bit more?
It does.
It does for me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I just love hearing, knowing how much I love traveling and that kind of experience. I'm always drawn to those kinds of people too.
Yeah, sort of an interesting thing. When Charhanda Cox has a question. When you open up a conversation, how do you open up a conversation about human trafficking? Just bringing it up. How do you do that?
That's
sort of
a really interesting question.
isn't it? Yeah.
It's really funny. There's some instances where I'm at a bridal shower or something. They're like, so what do you do? And I'm like, we don't need to talk about that. We're here to have fun. So one way, people just often in just regular conversation ask what you do, and so that's an easy opener to say.
People are automatically interested, I'm sure, when you talk about it.
Absolutely, people are always really interested, and I think that's just a natural question. And so because I work on the issue of human trafficking, when someone asks what I do, then it provides a natural opener to talk about the issue of human trafficking. So I don't really ever have a problem opening that conversation. But yeah.
Yeah. You talked earlier about if we're creating our own nonprofit, or if we're working in a nonprofit, making sure that we reach out to see who else is doing things, who our potential collaborators are. When you look around at the landscape of trafficking, and really just for yourself, as you've grown as a leader within your organization, are there natural groups where you feel like you've learned stuff? Who are some of the nonprofits that you guys have gone to naturally that have really helped you as a leader grow?
That's really interesting. I've had we've just had really great, strong partners across the board on the issue of human trafficking. I think everyone has that unique skill set that we could all learn from. You have the YMCA who does victim services, and I couldn't do their job, but knowing the compassion that they have for their victims, their clients, and also how protective they are of their clients, I think is so important. And I mean, they're really, truly there for their clients 24/7, and that is amazing to see. And knowing that compassion and being able to be a trumpet for them. Catholic Charities has some. Wafa is a great leader at Catholic Charities. She's really good about speaking her mind, which I think is really important. And she
in sort of a very non-offensive way.
Yeah.
You know she's opinionated, but
it's good. It's like
Yeah.
she'll let people know what she thinks, and she's fine with like a difference of opinion, but she's going to let you know where she stands. And I think that's really important and really bold. And I think I like that of a leader who's someone who's like, I'm going to tell you what I'm going to say what I need to say, and you could take it or leave it, but I need you to know this information. So I think that's really helpful to know. The Children's Assessment Center has an amazing leader over there. I love hearing about their work. So
Elaine Stolte over there.
Yes, Elaine.
Yeah.
I know, who's
Yeah.
Elaine.
How much? But there's so much passion that so many of the churches bring in the anti-trafficking movement. Do you learn from that?
I do. It's really great to see the passion of the faith community, and it's important to work them into the issue. And they are so incredibly passionate about it, and it's really interesting to see where that passion comes from. And I think the challenge is always connecting, because we're a non-denominational, non-faith-based organization, but to connect that, like, what we do is very much in line with your faith traditions and how you and why you're interested in this subject. And so making those connections and connecting those dots has been really helpful. I mean, we've had an amazing partnership with Chapelwood United Methodist, who just really have gone gangbusters on this issue, which has been really exciting to see.
How have you, in the 5-6 years, is it 5 years that you've been
5 years, yeah.
5 years that you've been at Houston Rescue and Restore, have you seen the landscape for nonprofits, for the anti-trafficking movement, sort of at that level, that nonprofit level? Have you seen that landscape change?
It has changed a lot, especially in the anti-trafficking field. There were just a few organizations working in the trafficking sphere, some organizations working like as children was like a part of what they do, but not exclusively what they do. And I've seen a huge change and a lot more organizations working on the issue exclusively and coming from different places, some faith traditions, some not. But it's been a really growing field, the anti-trafficking field, not just in Houston, but I've seen that nationally as well. And it's been an interesting struggle. You have like kind of the old guard, like the people that have been there for the last 10 years, really working on this issue and have gone through the weeds on it, and then you have these new people. You're like, I don't know who these new people are. There's a lot of new people out there, and you're like, and there's a tentativeness there. You're like trying to figure out who they are and what they want to do and how or where you could partner. And
how long are they going to be around? Is it a real deal?
Is it a flash in the pan, or are they going to be there for the next 10 years? Like, the old guard, if you will. And so I think there is some great possibilities out there, but also I think there's some tentativeness. And I think you have to be that way.
Yeah. Talk to me about the importance of strategic planning for you as a leader and for Houston Rescue and Restore. And then take me through that plan and what does Houston Rescue and Restore look like 5 or 10 years from now?
Yeah, that's actually a great question. We're in the middle of a new phase of strategic planning. We're creating our 2020 vision. And so it's.
What are people going to do after 2020? It seems like we all have 2020
and everyone's like 2020
vision.
is this great number. They're like 2021. What are we
doesn't
doing?
work as well.
I know, it just doesn't sound as good. One, strategic planning is incredibly important. If you could build this great ship, but if you have no idea where you're sailing it or which direction you're going first, then who cares if you have a great built ship? Like, who cares? Like, you can't take it anywhere. So strategic planning, that's how I see it. It's like the map, the roadmap of where you're going to go, what course you're charting. Are you going to go north first? Are you going to go west? Are you going to go northeast? Who knows? So that is what we're in the middle of right now, is charting that course. And it's a series. It's also, you have to dedicate yourself to strategic planning. It's not something that happens in an afternoon. It's something that you have to the board, you have to have board members who are dedicated to it. You have to have staff members input. It has to be a collaborative effort because the staff is going to be the implementers of this plan. So if you don't get their input, then your strategic plan is going to sit on a bookshelf because they're going to be like, I'm not doing this. Like, there's no way I could get this done. So you have to have both sides of that together. And as a leader of the organization, it's my job to bring the board's ideas, but also the reality of the staff together in creating that plan.
Give us some idea, Maria, of maybe some of the ideas that are starting to emerge, maybe some of your ideas of what Houston Rescue and Restore might look like in 5 years. Do you have some ideas of what you might like to see? It may change in the planning process, but what are you seeing right now?
We're seeing some kind of some of the things that I mentioned. We're really wanting to develop a research arm of the organization. What that looks like in reality in terms of if we have staff who are researchers on staff, or if we collaborate with academics in the field that we bring on as consultants, that's kind of working out. But we really think that there's a need, and there is, we want to be part of that research. We want to be an organization, the go-to organization for information on human trafficking. So it might be we're bringing information and then we have it, or we're also doing unique, interesting research. I want to expand the prevention piece. And look at those demand sides, having a whole unit or department, if you will, looking at prevention and what does that look like, working with young girls and young boys, but what else can we do on the prevention side? Are there things that we could do to better curb demand now, not just a generation from now? So those are some areas. And then continuing, I think our core programming will continue to stay. We still are in the 4th largest city in the country, and we still have a lot of training that we still need to do, and I don't see that going away anytime soon.
Do you find yourself, Maria, and I want to try to get a good picture of this, I find myself at home, if I'm watching TV or if I'm at the movies, I'm still thinking about ideas for children at risk. It's like I'm working 24 hours a day in a sense. Do you find yourself doing exactly the same thing in terms of Houston Rescue and Restore and the anti-trafficking movement?
Oh, absolutely. I dream about the organization on a regular basis. I'll wake up and be like, did I just have a dream about work? So even while I'm sleeping, I am thinking about the organization often. But I'm taking a shower, have an idea, and I'm like, oh, that's a great idea. Or I'm talking to my girlfriends over, a glass of wine. Yeah, I'm always thinking about the organization and different ideas and things that we could do to make and be more effective.
Wow. Let's ask a couple more questions from some of the. Charhanda wants to know, is this your first executive director position?
It is.
Yeah, absolutely, right. An example of something that people can do, some of the people watching today can do to stop trafficking.
Well, my challenge right now during the holiday season is how can you make your holiday a slave-free holiday? This is the time where we spend money, and I think it's a great time to be socially conscious consumers. December 3rd is Fair Trade Tuesday. So instead of spending all your money...
Hashtag Fair Trade Tuesday.
Hashtag Fair Trade Tuesday. Instead of spending all your money on Black Friday, save some of that for Fair Trade Tuesday. Figure out ways that you can, and actually what we're doing on our Facebook right now is every single day, I think it was starting this Monday, we're giving a new idea of something that you could buy for the holidays.
Oh, what a good idea.
That's fair trade. And so if you want to see all those different ideas, like us on Facebook and you'll see those different things. We'll also have a shopping night.
Is it just Houston Rescue and Restore on Facebook? Pretty simple.
Yeah, it'll pull it. Houston Rescue and Restore on Facebook. You'll see those different ideas. And they're wide. You could get olive oil that's fair trade from Palestine. You could get baskets from Uganda. You could get scarves from Cambodia. You could get coffee from Kenya. There's so many different items now. You could get lentil soup from the Women's Bean Project in Colorado. It's just so many different interesting ideas. And so we're trying to bring that to the community and let people know about it. We're having a shopping night at 10,000 Villages on December 4th. You could come out and do a lot of your holiday shopping then. So that's one of my big challenges is what can you do to change your own consumerism that can affect human trafficking and the global slave trade? Maybe it's changing the kind of coffee that you make, that you buy every day. I was in Australia recently. Starbucks in Australia is 100% fair trade.
Is it really? But not in the United States.
But not in the United States. Why not? So that's interesting to kind of...
Because someone put the political pressure on in Australia and it hasn't been done here.
Right. Right, and that is about consumers putting that political pressure, because that's really what companies answer to, is their consumers. And so it's important to each one of us to make that change.
Harry Davis has a great question, and this is referring, I think, to you starting off by talking about passion is so important. He wants to know, could business savvy alone help someone start a nonprofit and be successful in the nonprofit area? What do you think?
I think that...
Sort of an interesting question.
I actually think being business savvy is critically important to the success of a nonprofit. More nonprofits need to run their organizations like businesses. They don't need to become a business, but they need to run the nonprofit as a business. If you don't do that, I think you're naive. You do need to have business practices within your nonprofit. So I think having strong business savvy would go a really long way in creating a good, strong foundation and infrastructure in the nonprofit. But at the end of the day, you still need to be passionate about what you're trying to do. If you're not passionate about it, then it doesn't matter how great you build your organization, people aren't going to buy it because they're drawn to passion. You need to be able to convince people that your cause is more worthy than anything else. And if you don't have passion, I think it's really hard to do that.
Yeah, I agree with you. Business savvy, very important. Passion, vision, without those things, you're not going to be as successful. Let me try one more question before I... is it difficult to gain financial support for your cause, or is the community steadily supportive? This is Monica Saenz.
I think we have been seeing our support really grow over the years. I think the challenge that we have in the anti-trafficking field is that we're not a direct service organization. I think people tend to want to give directly to victims, and they see that connection more obviously, that their hard-earned money is going to someone who really deserves it. And I absolutely agree that, victim services is critically important, and they definitely need funding. But kind of making the case of education, and in order to be able to rescue victims, you need to have that education and awareness piece, is a little bit harder of a sell, but it has been growing and been a lot easier over the years.
And the more you do it, the easier it becomes, and the more knowledgeable people are in terms of the need for awareness. I mean, we find the same with policy. The idea that we're going to change policy, but people have to...
It's not as sexy to sell.
No, it isn't. It really isn't. So, Jennifer Tomasic wants to know about which countries have the biggest issues with human trafficking around the world. As we look around the world, which countries?
Yeah, some of the biggest areas, India has a huge issue with human trafficking. We also look at like Cambodia and Thailand, some of the African countries, but India, I hear over and over again, kind of one of the biggest areas. It also has a huge population. There's debates about how big it is in China as well, so yeah.
And are there different types of trafficking that we would see in China versus India versus the United States?
Yeah, I would say a large majority of trafficking in those countries is more labor trafficking. A vast majority globally is the labor trafficking issue, where in the United States we see a much bigger issue on sex trafficking. There is still labor trafficking, but definitely sex trafficking is more predominant.
In our lifetimes, will we see a decrease in trafficking and an end to trafficking?
I believe so. I think we can. I think Kevin Bales said it great. He has like a 25-year plan. I think we're probably like 5 years into that, or maybe even 10 years into that plan. So, but it does take I say it over and over again. It takes everyone to come together. It takes companies. It takes, the average Joe on the street. It takes businesses. It takes law enforcement. It takes everyone coming together and playing their role. Until we all come together, I think it'll be difficult.
What's the best thing about your job, Maria?
I think the best thing about my job is that I get to work on an issue that I feel I'm really contributing to society. And that's always been really important to me. Finding a career that I feel like I'm really making even just a small difference, that not even a difference, but I'm contributing to making the world a better place. And I get to do that every day.
Wow. Pretend the cameras aren't on. What do you want to do in a couple years? I mean, do you want to stay at Houston Rescue and Restore? Or are you going to be in the anti-trafficking movement your whole life? What does the future bring for you?
That's a really great question that I haven't figured out the answer to. As we said earlier, I'm from Denver, and my family's still in Denver, so Denver has always been a draw to eventually go home. But I'm waiting for that great opportunity to draw me there. I don't know if I'll stay in the anti-trafficking movement forever. It's a big haul, to spend your entire career fighting a really noble issue. So I don't know. We'll have to see.
It's interesting, right? When we think about these things, about what the future holds, and you're so much younger than I am that it's a different question for you.
Retirement, no.
Talk to me about you have to devote yourself to this entirely, but one of the things that the women in our class often like to ask is about work-life balance. And why the men aren't asking this, I don't know. But how does that work for you, work-life balance?
It's hard. I think it's one of my biggest challenges as a leader is to have a good work-life balance. You have to just create those boundaries. No one else is going to take care of yourself except you. Mm-hmm. And it's hard. There's oftentimes I'm working until 9 o'clock at night. I mean, it happens. But then one of the boundaries, for example, that I put in my life is I don't work on the weekends. I'm not going to do it unless there's a major event.
Right.
I'm not going to work on the weekends. I'm not going to bring home any work. I'm going to turn it off. Doing yoga, I'm a huge, yoga fiend, and that really recharges my batteries. So, and those are the things that I need to do. Like, I need to do yoga at least once a week. That really helps me. Going to get massages, just things that help take care of yourself. Spending time with your girlfriends, your family, your friends. And allowing yourself that time to turn that off and just be you. Just vegging out in front of the TV. I really like watching TV. I love Scandal. That's, just turning it off and watching Scandal is
like Scandal.
Great.
Is that your favorite show?
It's
Scandal?
one of my favorite shows. Thursday nights is a big TV night for me. Going to the gym also is really helpful, just kind of getting that stress relief, taking walks.
So a couple of quick little questions. Your favorite restaurant in Houston, Maria? Do you have a favorite restaurant?
Right now, I'm a really big fan of Uchi.
Yeah, isn't that a great place?
So good. It's great when other people are buying, but still
Even
pretty
better.
good.
So people have been dividing this. The last couple of people have said, how about affordable restaurant and more expensive restaurant? Uchi falls into a little bit more pricey.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, it does. On the affordable side, I mean, I love like the whole... The taco truck on like West Alabama is really good. That's a great place to go.
And very affordable.
Very, very affordable. Really good tacos.
Do you have a favorite hidden secret venue, place that maybe not a lot of other people go to in Houston?
And I don't know how hidden, it was hidden to me, so I think it's a hidden place. But Tiny Boxwoods on West Alabama and Saint Street, it's not the one that...
not in the West U.
Not the West U one, but the one that's actually really hidden. Like, unless you actually know that it's there.
It's like this little oasis, isn't it?
It is such an oasis. I love that place. They have, actually for my birthday, that's what I went. I went and had birthday breakfast there.
You feel refined when you're...
You do. You get this great coffee.
Which is a feeling I never have. So
it's just such a beautiful space. It's attached to the nursery, and you have this like beautiful garden. It's the perfect place to spend a gorgeous, Sunday afternoon.
Tiny Boxwoods on Alabama. Yeah. Do you have a leadership idol or someone that's sort of like your favorite person in history that you've always liked, that you maybe you don't exactly emulate, but you sort of take ideas from?
Yeah, this is an interesting question. One of the things that kind of came to mind were kind of like strong women that really like are out there speaking their mind, like someone like Susan Sarandon, who's out there that's not. She's not conventional, if you will. She didn't get married, but she had kids with, someone who was her partner, and she's really out there kind of really speaking out on different issues that she really believes in, and she's very passionate about her work. And so someone like that.
And a great actress.
And a great actress, yes.
Yeah. So that's a perfect segue for the next question, which is when they make the Maria Trujillo story in Hollywood, who would play you if they made it this year? Who would you have play you?
Yeah, that's a great question. I was thinking of people I really like, like a Jodie Foster, like a Sigourney Weaver, who speaks their mind but very, intelligent, who has that kind of the academic background.
Great actors, yeah.
Great actors, and who speak very well and are very poised under pressure. But also, can find an alien.
That's right.
That's really important.
That was a very strong role for Sigourney Weaver too.
It was.
So Maria Trujillo with Houston Rescue and Restore, thank you so much for what you do for Houston.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for the anti-trafficking movement that you're such a significant part of. And thanks for being on our show tonight.
Absolutely. Thank
Very
you for
good.
having me. This was
All
great.
right. We'll see you soon.
Yes.
And next week, of course, we want you to enjoy your Thanksgiving, so we won't be here in the leadership studio, but we will see you next time with some more stuff. And keep up the good work, guys. Keep those papers coming. Kavita has not had her baby yet, by the way. Some of you know that she's been grading some of your papers. She hasn't had that baby yet, but it'll be coming soon. See you next time at the Leadership Studio.